It was around 11 p.m. when I picked up a fare from a dimly lit corner on the outskirts of town. I had driven countless shifts as an Uber driver, but something about this particular night sent a shiver down my spine before the ride even began. The man waiting under a sputtering street lamp was unusually silent, his eyes hidden beneath a low-brimmed cap. Without a word, he climbed into the back seat. I started the engine, and as we pulled away, the heavy silence in the car felt more ominous than any conversation. From the start, every moment was laden with tension. The passenger didn't speak, not even a greeting. His gaze, fixed on some distant point, was unnerving. As we drove through deserted industrial zones, I noticed he kept fidgeting with something in his pocket. I dared a glance in the rearview mirror and saw him slowly unfold a crumpled piece of paper. The paper was filled with erratic, nearly frantic scribbles, an unsettling mix of warnings and cryptic directions that made my heart race. When he quickly tucked it away, I felt a surge of alarm. I tried to steer the conversation back to normalcy, asking him about his destination, but he merely grunted, his eyes darkening. The ride took a series of unpredictable turns, back roads and alleys where the streetlights barely held on. My instinct screamed that I was no longer on a routine drive. Suddenly, as we passed an abandoned warehouse, he leaned forward so abruptly that the back of his head almost hit the seat. His eyes met mine for a split second, filled with a dangerous intensity that told me he wasn't just a silent rider, he was someone desperate, or worse, dangerous. At that moment, my gut twisted with the realization that I might be in the middle of something far more sinister than a simple fare. The car veered sharply off the familiar route, and I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I reached for my phone, but before I could dial 911, the man slammed his hand down on mine, a cold, unyielding grip that sent a jolt of pure terror through me. "Don't try anything," he hissed in a low, menacing tone, his voice barely above a whisper yet echoing in the confined space. For a long, agonizing moment, I was trapped between the instinct to fight and the desperate need to survive. I could smell the fear in the stale air, and the car seemed to close in around me. Every nerve in my body screamed to escape. With trembling hands, I managed to break free when he momentarily loosened his grip to adjust the car's controls. In that instant, I fumbled for my phone, quickly dialing 911. I whispered a hurried plea into the receiver, describing my location and the imminent threat as tears blurred my vision. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. I could hear the distant wail of sirens as the sound grew louder and louder. In the chaos, the man's eyes widened in disbelief as I clutched the phone and kept speaking. The ride ended abruptly when the car screeched to a halt near a deserted stretch of road. Police vehicles converged on the scene, and in the ensuing struggle, the passenger tried to wrestle control of the car. Officers rushed in, and after a tense scuffle, they subdued him and handcuffed him on the spot. Even as they led him away, my heart pounded with a mix of terror and relief. I learned later that the man was linked to several violent incidents, and his cryptic note turned out to be part of a larger, dangerous message meant for someone else entirely. Though the investigation continues, that night's ride remains a stark reminder. Sometimes the silence hides a threat that can mean life or death. I now drive with an unwavering vigilance, knowing that even a quiet fare can bring you face to face with danger. Story 2: The Last Ride. After a grueling day at work, I booked an Uber expecting nothing more than a tired commute home. The app matched me with a driver in an old sedan that looked like it had seen better days. As soon as I got into the back seat, a palpable tension gripped me. The driver's smile was thin and his eyes darted around as if he were constantly on edge. His nervous energy set off alarms in my mind even before we pulled away. We started on what should have been a familiar route, but it soon became clear that something was terribly wrong. The driver took unexpected turns, bypassing major roads and heading into the outskirts of town. The car's interior, cluttered with random items, old keys, a scuffed leather bag, and even a half-empty bottle of whiskey, only added to the eerie atmosphere. I felt the air grow thick with apprehension as the familiar city lights faded into the dim glow of poorly lit, desolate streets. Every question I asked was met with curt, evasive answers. "Relax, I know the way," he said, his voice tight and laced with an underlying threat. My heart raced as the car wound its way through narrow alleys and abandoned industrial parks. I reached for my phone to text a friend about the odd route, but my hands trembled so much I nearly dropped it. Then, without warning, the driver slammed the brakes in a narrow, dark alley. The abrupt stop sent shockwaves through me as I braced myself against the backrest. At that moment, I realized I wasn't alone in the danger unfolding around me. The driver's demeanor shifted, his eyes hardened, and he leaned in close, his face contorted with malice. "No one needs to get hurt tonight," he whispered, and I felt a cold dread wash over me. I knew I had to act fast. My instincts kicked in, and I fumbled to dial 911. Before I could even complete the call, he snatched the phone from my hand, shoving it aside. Panic surged as I realized that my life was hanging in the balance. This wasn't a simple detour, it was a deliberate act to trap me. Adrenaline took over as I scanned the car for any chance to escape. I noticed a loose window and, without hesitation, I began to pry it open with my bare hands. The driver lunged toward me as I forced the window open, and for a split second, I was locked in a brutal struggle. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it, and the confined space became a battleground where every second felt like an eternity. With one desperate kick, I managed to break free, shoving him back just enough to scramble through the open window. I tumbled out onto the cold, hard pavement, pain and fear mingling in a dizzying rush. Behind me, I heard the driver cursing and pounding on the car as he tried to close the window. I sprinted into the dark alley, every instinct screaming that my life depended on my next move. The sound of his pursuit was relentless, echoing in the narrow corridors of the abandoned buildings around me. Just when it seemed I might be cornered, the distant wail of sirens pierced the night. The driver's steps faltered as flashing blue lights bathed the alley in a surreal glow. Officers arrived, and in the ensuing chaos, the driver was overpowered and arrested. I was left shaking, every nerve in my body still on high alert, as the police wrapped him in handcuffs and took him away. That night, I came perilously close to losing my life. The terror of that final ride is etched in my memory, a reminder that danger can be lurking even in what seems like an ordinary journey home. In the aftermath, as I recovered from the shock and began to rebuild my sense of safety, I vowed to never again ignore the small signs that something isn't right. Story 3: The Midnight Fair. I remember that chilly autumn night as if it were etched into my memory. After a late dinner downtown, I requested an Uber, expecting a quick ride home. The app confirmed my ride, and soon a black sedan pulled up in front of me. At first glance, everything seemed normal. The driver greeted me with a curt nod, and I settled into the back seat. But the moment I buckled up, an uneasy feeling began to gnaw at me. The car's interior smelled faintly of stale cigarette smoke mixed with a metallic tang I couldn't place. The driver's eyes remained fixed on the road with a hard, unblinking stare. We merged onto the highway, but before long, I noticed we weren't following the route my navigation had shown. Street after street passed by, each one darker and more deserted than the last. I cleared my throat and asked, "Are we headed downtown?" The driver only grunted and made a sharp turn onto a narrow, winding road. My heart pounded as the familiar city lights gave way to an eerie silence and unkempt roadside scenery. I tried to steady my voice, telling myself I was just tired, but the discomfort deepened with every mile. As we drove further into unfamiliar territory, the GPS on my phone showed a route that made no sense. I glanced around, and the world outside was a blur of abandoned lots and flickering streetlights. Panic began to bubble inside me when I realized my phone's battery was nearly dead, leaving me isolated and unable to call for help. I pressed once more, "Sir, please take me to the main road." His response was a low, almost amused, "Trust me, this is the fastest way," as if he knew something I didn't. Soon, the sedan pulled up beside a dilapidated gas station in a rough part of town. The driver stopped abruptly. "This is where you get off," he said, his tone final and unsettling. I looked at the dark, empty parking lot, the wind rustling through broken neon signs, and my instinct screamed to run. I hesitated only a moment before stepping out into the cold night air. The driver's eyes never left me as he said, "I'll call you another ride." My pulse hammered as I walked briskly toward the station building, trying to find shelter and a safe place to make a call. Within minutes, flashing blue lights appeared as a police car pulled up. Officers quickly surrounded the area, and in the ensuing confusion, the driver's car sped away into the darkness. The police informed me that similar reports had come in recently, rides that ended in desolate locations with drivers vanishing without a trace. Although my heart still raced, the presence of the law brought a measure of relief. I later learned that the incident was part of a string of unsettling events that had everyone on edge. I felt fortunate to have escaped unharmed, yet that ride remains a stark reminder that even in a world of modern technology, danger can lurk in the most unexpected places. Every time I see an Uber app notification, I remember that night and am grateful for the timely arrival of help.